So as Gary just said, my name is David Sheehan. I work for Quality Water, one of the leading partners, and I'll be the convener for this session. And as most of you will be well aware, water safety plans are the internationally recognised method for producing safe drinking water. They provide that proactive and management framework to provide safe drinking water quality to your customers. And of course, as we all know in this room, it's central to the delivery of Vietnam's National Water Program for Water Safety Plan for water safety from 2016 to 2025. And we, I guess, as Australian utilities, are very committed to helping Vietnam achieve that goal. So I thought I'd start off by going through a little bit around water safety plans, and just like asset management has been a common theme across the 5 twinning arrangements, so is water safety planning. So as part of this workshop, we'll hear from 3 of the organisations about what they've achieved in water safety plans over the last 18 months. But I thought I'd start with a little bit of a general introduction around the issue and the development and implementation of water safety plans. So I guess the first thing you need to do is obviously develop a water safety, develop for each of your water supply systems a specific water safety plan. And the reason that's important is because risks change from each of the different supply systems. So rather than having a generic one, you need to go through and develop one for each of your supply systems. And that way you can tailor the plan to the particular hazards and risks that you find in your source water. And there's many guidance manuals around here, but I've added a link up there to one that the Asian Development Bank's produced, which is a good place to start if you haven't quite developed your water safety plan to this point. Then what you need to do is go through and find and identify the risks and hazards to your water supply system. And WHO has produced this guidance manual, which allows utilities to identify their various hazards and risks. And the really nice thing is that's available free for download. And the one shown here, you can identify that as a risk. And it's all to do with surface water, so you can go onto WHO's website and download the document, and it can help you guide your decision-making process around hazards and risks for your particular water supply system. But the important thing around water safety plans is that a good water safety plan isn't just a document that sits on the shelf and I can produce it. A really useful and productive water safety plan, one is that first of all is implemented, so you take it from being produced and actually use it in the field. It helps inform how you manage your water supply systems, and particularly your drinking water treatment processes. And it should also be regularly updated to reflect changing risks in your water supply system over time. And what I put up there with the link, which I'm assuming these slides are being circulated up as well, that document can be downloaded for free, which gives you an idea of how you can go through and develop management processes within your treatment plant to manage microbial risks and hazards. So now, just like what Gary did in his session, I'd like to go through how various water utilities in the program have managed risks or managed the development of water safety plans. I'd like to start off with what Food Tool Water Supply and Golden Water have been doing. And I'd like to invite Mr. Brooke, the Chairman of Food Tool Water Supply Company, to come up and join me while we go through this part of the presentation. And it's a great privilege to have Mr. Brooke here today to co-present. So as we mentioned earlier on, this is a very strong partnership. So we see that not only are we learning from Food Tool Water, but they're learning from us. And one of the good things it is very consistent and strong partnership that we were trying to develop. But over the 18 months that we've been working with Food Tool Water Supply Company, one of the major pieces of work that we've done is we went out and reviewed 3 of Food Tool Water Supply Company's water enterprises. And the purpose of those reviews was to see where we could find opportunities for improvement. And so Food Tool Water Supply Company is currently working through the recommendations that we put forward to see where they can find the best benefit and implement those improvement processes. At the moment we're going to focus on the Fung Chau Water Enterprise, and what we'd like to do in a collaborative effort with Food Tool Water Supply Company and hopefully various ministries in Vietnam is get to a point where we can achieve the production of drinking water from water of a drinking water standard from this treatment plant, and hopefully be able to go back to Food Tool's customers and say that they can drink the water at their homes. And if we can achieve that, that'll be a fantastic outcome. And again, we're working very closely with Food Tool on that. So part of the improvement work we're looking at implementing at Fung Chau is to improve their SCADA system, because at the moment it's a little bit underdeveloped, and the current system pretty much only monitors the flow of water. But what we'd like to do is get to the point where it actually sort of monitors other water quality parameters, so that we can go and have confidence that the water that's being produced is of the drinking water standard. And the other thing we've produced for Food Tour is gone through and done the process flow diagrams, which are based on software that we use at Colburn. So we're saying if this was a Colburn water treatment facility, this is what our process flow diagram would be. This is where we would put our meters and monitoring stations, and they're the critical control points and alert limits that we would use. And in that way, we could hopefully sort of replicate what we do in Colburn Water in Food Tool Water Supply Company. And I'd now like to offer the opportunity for Mr. Book to say any words he'd like to say about our working water safety plan.
Thưa các vị, rất là cảm ơn ngài đến. Chúng tôi rất là cảm ơn Hội các nước Việt Nam và Hội các nước Úc đã cho chúng tôi kết đôi với một cái công ty tuyệt vời, có một cái trình độ sản xuất rất là cao, nhưng mà họ cũng có những cái khó khăn cấp nước như chúng tôi từ một tỉnh miền núi của Việt Nam. Trong thời gian kết đôi chúng tôi được học ở các bạn rất nhiều việc, nhưng mà cho đến bây giờ là chúng tôi muốn đi đến một số kết quả để nâng cao nó lên. Đó là việc nâng cao chất lượng nước và việc cấp nước an toàn. Trước đây thì là cái nước của chúng tôi cung cấp về mùa hè thường là rất là thiếu, vì nhà máy chúng tôi chưa đủ công suất. Cho nên là ở các bể lọc là chúng tôi phải thay thế vật liệu lọc, thay thế than bằng than anthracite để cho cái tốc độ lọc nó cao lên, làm cho đảm bảo nước cho mùa hè. Nhưng mà vì cái nguồn nước phải lọc với tốc độ nhanh như vậy, cho nên là nó mới chỉ đảm bảo tiêu chuẩn nước vệ sinh của Việt Nam. Và bây giờ chúng tôi là muốn nâng cao cái chất lượng nước lên và giám sát nó để có thể uống được hiệu quả. Việc này là chúng tôi rất là biết ơn các bạn Coliban, vì là chúng tôi đã học được họ một cái công nghệ lọc nước rất là tốt. Ngoài cái lọc nước ở công nghệ tốt đấy, thì cái việc đưa cái hệ thống giám sát FPA vào để giám sát nguồn nước từ đầu vào cho đến đầu ra một cách tự động hóa. Tôi cho rằng là kỳ này David đến với chúng tôi, bạn sẽ cảm thấy ngạc nhiên khi một cái bể chứa rất là lớn 2.000 mét khối mà chúng tôi chỉ xây dựng trong 1 tháng rưỡi đã xong để mà đáp ứng được cái nước của cái Phong Châu. Và nhà máy nước Việt Trì chúng tôi cũng dự kiến với Coliban để nâng cấp nó lên vậy. Thì nếu như mà các bạn đến muộn chỉ 1 tháng rưỡi nữa thôi là chúng tôi phải nâng cấp cái nhà máy nước Việt Trì từ công suất 60.000 mét khối ngày đêm lên 120.000 mét khối ngày đêm bằng một công nghệ mới. Lần này thì chắc là David đến thì nó chỉ có xem cái mặt bằng chuẩn bị, nhưng mà 1 tháng rưỡi nữa là cái công nghệ lọc lamen, lắng lamen của cái nhà máy nước Việt Trì đã xong. Chắc chắn là lúc xong là tôi sẽ mời các bạn Coliban sang thăm. Vấn đề là xác định như ngài David đã nói là chúng tôi phải nâng cấp cái nhà máy nước Phong Châu bằng cái hệ thống giảm thoát Ekeda. Thì lần này các bạn sang sau ngày 12 tháng 11 đấy, thì chúng tôi sẽ thống nhất về cách thức làm để các bạn có những hình thức giúp đỡ để chúng tôi có thể mua sắm các thiết bị đó từ Úc hoặc ở các nước khác để làm thế nào đảm bảo cho cái hệ thống giám sát đấy nó thực hiện được. Và ngoài những việc mà như ngài David đã trình bày thì chúng tôi còn rất nhiều việc chúng tôi phải làm với nhau, nhất là cái quản lý tài sản là chúng tôi cũng đang mong muốn từ các bạn giúp đỡ. Việc tạo điều kiện giúp đỡ để nâng cao hơn nữa cái việc cấp nước an toàn. Bởi vì tỉnh Phú Thọ chúng tôi là một cái địa bàn rất rộng và là tỉnh miền núi, cho nên chúng tôi có mười mấy nhà máy nước. Nhưng mà bây giờ cái việc cấp nước an toàn này thì bây giờ chúng tôi chỉ mới giới hạn thực hiện được một vài nhà máy. Và việc này là sau cái Phong Châu là chúng tôi mong muốn các bạn sẽ giúp đỡ chúng tôi để mà có thể nhân rộng ra toàn bộ các nhà máy ở công ty. Xin cảm ơn các vị.
Chairman book was very modest because it is a very strong collaborative partnership that we have with the Water Supply Company. Now I'd like to sort of ask at the stage Son La and Cairns Regional Council to describe how they've been going through water safety plans in their 20 arrangements.
Start off, that's Son La's major water treatment plant. Just some filtration, then the laminar filters and coagulation, flocculation areas. So we've with our process and our workshops, we've really tried to concentrate on hands-on, good, tangible outcomes for Son La. And essentially we looked at the system assessment, which is effectively a risk assessment, operation monitoring, our quality control points, critical control points, and we also went a bit further and looked at an emergency response flowchart for them if they were in breach of their PCP or CCP. So we have some big data for Son La only last week, where we undertook a risk assessment. Son La, like I've mentioned before in the asset management, they're quite mature also in relation to their water safety plans. They've already developed a number of plans for a number of their networks. So that enabled us to assess their risk assessments, and we were able to build on those risk assessments, and in particular look at what control measures they have in place to reduce those risks and hazards that they'd identified. We're also able to categorise the hazards, whether it be the catchment, the treatment, or the distribution network. So we have a big robust discussion about those three areas and those hazards that were identified. From that, we were able to look at their control measures. So, because they were mature and had completed their water safety plans, they had process-wide flow diagrams available for us, and within them they had identified a number of sample points. So we went through each of those sample points, and at each one we looked at what they measured, and from that we were able to build these tables up. One of the critical aspects of these tables was the identification was who was responsible to undertake the work. Like once a quality control point or a critical control control point had been reached or breached, these tables were able to clearly define who did what. That created some really robust discussion on the day because of the public-private ownership of the entities. But at the end of the day, we got some very clear outcomes and outputs for Songla Water Company on a number of their sample areas. And finally, we looked at an incident flow chart. Songla have developed a number of response plans to high-level incidents. For example, when the plant is offline for 24 hours or more, there's a one level, greater than 24 hours, 3 days, 7 days, and they're very high level. What we wanted to generate for them was a grassroots flow chart that their operators down at the treatment plants and their directors of their water treatment plant could follow and clearly outline the steps that they could undertake if they had a critical control point breach. Again, this was something which we had a big day with them in developing this one. A lot of discussion. We had the whiteboard out, going through the whole response plan on the whiteboard before we could generate the final outcome. So it was, from my point of view and Ken's Regional Council's point of view, it was great to see the output from Songla and that discussion we had in generating not just this flow chart, but the risk assessment and the tables for their CCPs and QCPs. It was all very pleased and proud that we could walk away and there was some very tangible outputs for Songla in which they could build on for their number of other catchments and treatment systems they have within their region of province.
Thưa các quý vị, thưa những anh chị em đồng nghiệp, xin cảm ơn người bạn đồng nghiệp của đơn vị tháp đôi công ty chúng tôi cũng vừa trình bày một số công việc đã triển khai từ khi nước Sơn La trong cái việc xây dựng lại xây dựng cái kênh nước không được an toàn. Chắc là toàn bộ các đồng nghiệp của chúng ta nghe không an toàn thì cũng là nghe rất là quen và nhiều đơn vị đã triển khai làm cái này rất lâu. Và bản thân công ty cấp nước Sơn La cũng đã làm việc này rất lâu. Nhưng gần đây nhất là ngay trong năm vừa rồi, công ty chúng tôi đã có xảy ra một cái sự cố ô nhiễm nguồn nước mà toàn thành phố bị mất nước 10 ngày. Chính vì sự việc đó, chúng tôi cũng đã phải xây dựng lại kế hoạch cấp nước an toàn để trình tỉnh phê duyệt lại. Chúng tôi đã xây dựng tương đối kỹ và tương đối chặt chẽ theo các văn bản hướng dẫn của Tổ chức Y tế Thế giới được Bộ Xây dựng hướng dẫn lại và cũng đã được tỉnh phê duyệt. Tuy nhiên, khi tham gia kết nối với đơn vị bạn thì chúng tôi mới thấy được là cái việc xây dựng của chúng tôi tưởng rằng là đã rất là kỹ, rất là tốt. Nhưng khi tham gia với bạn, các bạn chỉ cho chúng tôi mới thấy được là trong nhiều bước chúng tôi làm vẫn còn rất là chưa được chặt chẽ, chưa được đầy đủ. Và gần đây nhất là từ hôm 30 cho đến hôm mùng 2 thì các chuyên gia của bạn cũng sang tập huấn tại Sơn La, và chính cái sơ đồ này các đơn vị bạn đã giúp cho những người quản lý vận hành là công nhân của chúng tôi trực tiếp xây dựng lên cái sơ đồ này. Chúng thấy đấy là làm việc với bạn rất là khoa học, rất là chính xác, rất là tỉ mỉ và có nhiều cái phương pháp giúp cho chúng tôi chấn chỉnh lại, bổ sung, sửa đổi lại kế hoạch cấp nước an toàn của chúng tôi nó tốt hơn trước. Xin cảm ơn.
Well, thank you so much to Cairns and Songla for that information. The next one that we had is Suwako and SEQ Water, and I'd like to invite them up to present. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Aaron Canning from SEQ Water, and I'm presenting on behalf of SEQ Water and Sewerage for the Water Safety Plan program. So, as we did for the asset management section, we looked at 2 treatment plants which are quite similar in size and used those as pilots for the implementation of the water safety program. Mount Crosby East Bank treatment plant in Brisbane and Tuduk in Ho Chi Minh City. As we saw before, this is the framework for water safety plans. We were just focusing on this area of the water safety plans, the system and the monitoring and the management. One of the first areas that we focused on was undertaking the risk assessment for the treatment plant, and we applied the SEQ Water Risk Management methodology which we had developed, where we look at unmitigated risk, and that is the risk of essentially drinking the raw water, and then we look at attenuated risk, which is the risk of drinking the treated water, and then mitigated risk, which is a number of hazardous events that can occur or potential failures that can occur during a treatment plant, and assess those risks. And what we end up then is with a risk treatment plan. This is just an example of what one of those risk assessments look like in the format that we use, which is just in a spreadsheet type. This is some of the outcomes of the workshop and the risk assessment. I won't go into the detail, but you can see that there's a number of risk treatment plans and risk treatment actions that came out, which Sewerage will be working on in the future. Then one of the other outputs of this risk treatment process is what we call on SEQ Water a wall chart, and that's where you go through each of the treatment processes, undertake the risk, look for those process steps that are critical, and then around those process steps you put tight performance criteria. So in the green column is what you might be targeting for performance. The orange is where you want to start undertaking some action or some intervention, and the red column would be when you would be starting to take some more serious action, which might be shutting the plant down or backwashing a filter. So we've gone through the process at the Tuduk treatment plant and undertaken this for each of the process steps and come up with those critical and action limits for each of those steps. Some of the key learnings from this partnership, we share common issues with risks that were identified through the risk assessments with the Tuduk treatment plant, not so different to ours at Mount Crosby. Reaffirm the high value of a team-based approach in undertaking this process. The recognition of the importance of training and awareness of operators and for other staff that undertake water management, and the linking of systems and processes, so the link of SCADA systems, online monitoring, and how important that is to successfully implement these type of management systems. So the key outcomes, review of the water safety plan for the treatment plant, improved documentation and process management for Sewerage, development of training for operators and maintenance on water safety plans, and identified opportunities for further improvements, such as chlorine disinfection, contamination, and auto desludge of sedimentation basins. So thank you very much. I'd just like to thank Sourgo for the hospitality of the SEQ Water staff that have come over the last 2 years, and the relationship is very important to us, and we hope that it is ongoing.
As we've all seen over the last 3 presentations from various twinning partners, we're all sort of working towards achieving the outcome of safe drinking water by using water safety plans. But what we'd like to do as an output of this program is to have some lasting tool or process that we can implement across the country, hopefully, beyond the 5 twinning arrangements we have in place currently. And one of the things we'd like to look at developing is a water safety planning tool. It's very early in its development at the moment, but this will give you an idea of what we'd like to achieve out of this process. So as we've seen over the course of the presentation, obviously risk management or water safety plans go from catchment through your water treatment plant and right through to your distribution system to your customer houses. And what we'd like to look at doing is implementing that sort of catchment to tap management process and the management of risk so that the customer can be confident that the water that we supply to their house is safe to drink. So what we'd like to do is then create an app for smart devices that's based on around 20 or 30 questions, which acts as a bit of a checklist of the main features that you want to cover in a water safety plan. Because most people in Vietnam, I guess, do have smart devices. You can have it in the field when you're out around at your water enterprise or your water treatment plant, and use that to work out whether you've got your water safety plan in good order or not. So this app would lead the utility staff through the main points of the development and implementation of water safety plans, with a strong focus on implementation, because we can all, so I guess, produce the documentation, but how do you then convert that documentation into on-ground works that improve the way your treatment plant operates? Provide advice in relation to each of these questions, and then also link off to more detailed resources that people could use to actually answer those questions or get more information. So it's still in the very early stages of development, but we hope that'll be one of the lasting outcomes of the utility improvement program that we're working with at the moment with corporations here in Vietnam.